All right. Looks like we might have everybody who can make it at the moment. Okay, so Fantasy Grounds is a client-server application. So what it means is the players' computers connect to the GM's computers, and they connect over the internet or over a local area connection, and that it means that for most of us, we need to have a look at, have a bit of an understanding of our network setup. So most of us are going to be behind a router or a firewall of some sort, and you will need to make some small changes to your firewall in most situations. Now, if you get stuck, making changes to routers and firewalls is a bugbear for a lot of new GMs on Fantasy Grounds. Throw us up a question up on the Fantasy Grounds forums, and there'll be plenty of people there that will help you out. But basically, what you need to do is either enable UPnP on your router or add a static port forwarding entry. Now, I'm going to do it really quickly on my router. We're not going to spend too much time on this. Just got a basic router attached here. So this router I've just connected up this morning. Now we've got, I've just enabled turn UPnP on. Now the newer the router, the more likely this is to work. So that's the, in fact, I didn't even have to do anything on this router. UPnP was turned on by default, and we can see here that a connection was automatically added to my router's firewall rules, which mapped port 1802 to my IP address internally. So on some older routers, or not even just older routers, sometimes on a router you'll have to do it manually. And doing it manually, we usually use port forwarding. The port forwarding rules are pretty simple. It's not going to be a predefined rule. The name is just for your benefit only. The start port is 1802. The end port is 1802. The protocol is TCP, and the local IP address is the IP address of my machine. Now, some routers, instead of the IP address, they'll actually present you with a list of the computer names on your network, and you can select them. That's really good because sometimes your IP address will change, but the rule is pointing to your computer name, which is fantastic. But the simplest way is to actually let UPnP do it. My old router that was connected up until 9 o'clock this morning didn't work with UPnP. It was quite an old router. This router, UPnP just worked straight out off the bat. I'm not going to add this rule simply because it's going to interfere with the existing one. But that's all you need to do on the router rules, is give it a name. The start port and the end port are both 1802. Some will also ask for an internal port. Guess what? It's 1802 as well. The protocol is TCP, and the local IP address is the IP address of your computer. Now, when you're starting Fantasy Grounds, on the load campaign screen, it'll actually tell you what IP address it's bound to. One thing that can happen for some players, for some GMs, sometimes you've got a network cable and a wireless connection, and Fantasy Grounds binds to the interface that you're not expecting it to. So if you have a wired and a wireless connection, turn the wireless off. Run on the wired connection while you're hosting, and you'll know what IP address you're using. The wired connection is a more reliable connection, particularly when you're hosting multiple connections. Anyone got any questions they want to ask about that? No questions? Hopefully everyone's hearing me okay. Is everybody hearing me okay? Great. Okay, so cool. So we're going to go back to say again. All right, I'm going to just close some of these other windows we've got open from the last session and get ready. All right, now I'm going to stop sharing the browser, and I'm going to start sharing Fantasy Grounds. So everybody on your local Fantasy Grounds connection, close whatever windows you've got open and just open it up to the splash screen. So the splash screen, it looks like, oops. Oh, I'm clicking the wrong buttons. I apologize. Okay, here we go. So this is the splash screen. So as a player, we'll be using join game. As a player, you'd use join game or manage characters when you're doing some offline management. But really today, we're looking at the GM's role. So we've got create new campaign and load campaign. When you're creating a new campaign, you've got to give it a name, GM session. The username, it uses by default your previous, whatever you've logged in as previously as a GM, but you have to have a username in there. If it's blank, it's not going to work. So if I click in there and change it, you've got to have one. Now, all usernames in any particular session have to be unique. If the GM is damned and a player called Dan wants to join in, he can't. Everyone's got to have a unique username. Now, it's only used for this connection and for identifying the owner of the various actors in the game, but it is a required setting. Now, we can see a whole bunch of different rule sets here. We've got all the standard rule sets, got a couple of rule sets that a few commercial rule sets here, a few community rule sets. This is a rule set I'm working on, but for the moment, I'm going to load up the Castles and Crusades rule set, but we'll drop back to the core. Actually, we might load up the we're going to load up a core RPG session instead, because that's easy enough for everyone else to use. So if everyone can give their session a name, GM session, choose the core RPG rule set. Now, I've got a couple of different themes here. That's cool. And clicking on start. So once your game's started, you'll get a desktop very similar to this one. For some of you who've just done the player session, I've gone through all the campaign tools for the player session. Anyone doing the GM session and who hasn't done the player session has probably got a little bit of experience with Fantasy Grounds already. So we're not going to go into all of these items in too much detail. But some tips here for adding content. I find in my games that the majority of players want to play a voice game because you get through a lot more with a voice game. Some players will prefer to play a text-based game because they feel it's more immersive, more descriptive, for whatever reason, but it's a lot slower. So whether you play a text game or a voice game, as a GM, you will enhance the player's experience if you can get some prep done in your story, mostly because if you're dropping descriptions of rooms as you come into them, or descriptions of important dialogue, there may be references in there that are important to the ongoing story, or important that will become relevant or important later on. And if it goes into the chat window, the text goes into the chat window, it's there for the players to review later on in that session, or even post the game session. They can go back in and they can remember what those rumors were that they heard in the inn. There was something that didn't make sense at the time, but now a little bit more information, they can piece things back together. If it's in the chat window, they can remember it. They can go back and find it themselves. If it's totally verbal, they were asking you questions. You've got to remember what you did or didn't tell them. And it may be you want to give them more information verbally or not, but having those prompters there or those clues there in the text is quite useful for the players. Now, I'll just give you a quick example of that in another session. We will just switch the screen over. I'm going to swap from that one to a different game instance just for the moment. So this is a different campaign I'm running. Now in my story, we've got some story entries here where there's a fair bit of text. Now, some of you may recognize where some of this text comes from. Now, when I'm creating new text, new entries, if I create a story entry here called Once Upon a Time, we'll see that it's put them alphabetically. So for you as a GM, while things may not happen in a linear fashion, you've often got references on a map or room numbers or a broad outline of how things are going to unfold, even if they don't necessarily happen totally chronologically. So you'll see here I've prefixed all my entries with numbers, and I haven't started with 1, I've started with 0, 1, and that's because if I put in an entry here that starts with 1, sadly it will put it after 0, 9. One of those things. So use 0, 1 through to 0, 9 and then 10. You'll find that will help you keep it in order. For me, as a GM, I've put some this note at the end here, GM. That's just a reference just for me to say that the information in here, in this particular entry, is just GM only. Whereas the information in here, character hooks, there's some information here that will be useful for me to hand out some information to the players. Again, this information here, this is pretty dry. This is real background stuff at the moment. Again, we've got a whole lot of background information. I've numbered them all off here. I broke this one down. This is still part of the introduction. I broke this one down into 2 screens for my benefit only. Now, you can see there was a lot of prep work that went into this, but it was all copy and paste. It wasn't too bad. But we'll see that we'll find some stuff here with some story. So here we've got a story entry that's got a bunch of different text types in here. So this is information for me. This is information for the GM. It's timing information, background setting, stuff I'm not going to read to the player, although I may ad-lib it to the player. But this information here with the chat bubble is stuff for the players. So presuming that the players are in the inn, I'm going to throw this out as is. Now I may have to modify. When you're doing text entries, you may put in a huge amount of effort into preparing all of your information in text, and in a largely voice game, things can happen really quickly, and the players will go off in a completely different tangent to where you're going. So that's where investing a huge amount of time in story prep in a voice game might not give you a great payoff, but getting key dialogues or key descriptions of key events and key locations into your story will be a great boon to your game, to your players, to the way things flow. So you can see that this text information is setting or mood. It's scenic as opposed to a specific person really going on. But the next session, you can see text session is being spoken by the town speaker, Norro Whiston. So when I click this text into the chat window, you can see it's actually spoken by Norrowiston, whereas the text above it is just purely descriptive. The characters engage in some discussion. Captain Serana gets involved. She throws in some bits and pieces. Now, again, the conversation may not flow strictly according to your script. You can still throw this in, but the GM, you can engage in active dialogue with your players and let it go in whatever direction it takes. You might skip a few of these things. There's a whole bunch of possible questions and answers here. Again, there's a lot of prep work in here. Does not necessarily require for your game, all of these bits and pieces, but you'll find, again, descriptions of places. So we've got a keep. So this is stuff that you want to throw out. You want to have these room locations and key events in text if you can, if you've got time. Now, what we want to do, if we want to create a piece of information like this, we'll go to a blank one. We've got a new story here. Blah blah. Now, I don't know, the Frog King was whatever. That'll do. Now, if I can right click on this, you will see. So the right click, for those that are unfamiliar with the Fantasy Grounds interface, if you don't know what to do, right click. A whole lot of options will be hidden in the right click. We want to change this to paragraph types. We can have a heading, normal text, which is by default, but if you need to change it from something else back to normal text, chat frame, which is what we want to do, the Frog King. Now you can see that this is now able to be thrown straight into the chat window, but I want it to be spoken by the Fairy Princess. So when I click that now, it's the Fairy Princess that's speaking. The other way of doing this, I'm going to add some more, that's what, a cross between argy-bargy and angry. Okay, let's go with angry. I'm going to change it to text frame and sorry, text here. Now, I can, as the GM, I might become the King's advisor. Now you'll see that the GM's advisor, now we've got the King's advisor. So I click that, and when I speak this now, no, that didn't do it. There's a way for me to change that based on my GM ID, but I've messed that up. How to do it? I'll come back to that one afterwards. But you can have multiple IDs down here. Actually, it might just be /ID King. There we go. No, but I can. You'll see some of my action roles and things like that. I can switch them between those persons. But the main one here is we've got chat, which is just clickable straight into the chat window, and here, which is spoken by a person. Now, if I open up a player session and connect up to this, I'm going to join game. We've got a nice feature. It's one that gets, can get a lot of play in, depending on the session. Rubbish. I have connected to the other game. If you've got a number of players in the game and you wanted to share a piece of information just with that player, instead of clicking on this and sending it to the chat window, what you can do is drag it up onto the player's portrait token up here, and it will be spoken to them only, and it'll appear as a whisper. So that person will see it, and it'll denote that they receive that as a whisper. And so if a particular player sees a clue, or hears a rumor in a pub that somebody else doesn't hear, you can whisper it to them just by dragging this pre-prepared text and dropping it onto their portrait, and only that person will get it. You could drop it onto 2 people or 3 people if you liked. But if you throw it into the chat window, everybody gets it. Another really nice feature in here is scene 1. We can create lists, call it a list, and we get this checkbox next to it. We'll create scene 2, scene 3. Now this is where you need to change it back to normal text. But these are links. We can drag lots of different things into these. So I can drag this story into there. I can drag an image into here. I can drag a person. I might have an NPC here. We've got Aaron. I can put Aaron in here. I could drag a piece of equipment or an item into there. And in my game, when it comes up, I know that, you know, scene 1, whatever, I can click on that and it'll bring up that next piece of information. I can bring up my NPC. I can bring up a map. I can share that map to the players quickly from there. So I can have all of these things linked to an index of all my story entries. So we might see not that one. I'm sure I had one here. I'm not seeing it just at the moment. Say, for example, all of these, I might have another story entry here just called number 19, where I list all, I just have a link to all of these towns, or I might have the towns and the NPCs linked on them. You can link items within other items. So in this particular one, I could link to the next town, which is Dorf. Change that to a link. Drag Dorf into there, and again, that will link it to you. Particularly in a internal environment, say inside a dungeon or a tavern or something where you've got numbered rooms, you might have next or previous room. You might have a link to the previous and past story entries, and that, you know, just another way of navigating your way all the way through these things. There's a feature here called the journal, which is an extension you can add in. The journal is another view of all this information, but you result in a lot less windows being opened up everywhere. So this one contains stories and notes on the same one. We've got major settlements here. We've got say personalities. We've got personalities and encounters on the same one. So this journal is just another view of that same part. So the next part, we've got maps and images. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. You want to show the a picture of the horde as they cross the river, like my background here, to sort of give an impression of the overwhelming odds that the PCs are facing, because you really, really want them to flee. You really don't want them to be the brave heroes and try and stop the army by themselves. You know, sometimes you've got to show them a picture so they really get the message. The other more common use of an image is for a map. So we've got a map here. Let's clear the masking. we've got a map here. Maps, a lot of games where there is combat, there's a fair bit of tactics involved now, and you get bonuses for flanking of the high ground or for 2 or 3 people ganging up on one opponent. So having a battle map is very important in a lot of games. You want to add a new map to your game. You click on the folder option here, and it opens up the images location in your campaign in your Fantasy Grounds app data rule set. I believe that on the Mac using Wineskin, this is still a little bit buggy. So if you're running a Mac, you'll have to, and you find that this doesn't work for you, you'll have to find that location yourself and open it outside of. But if I'm in Windows and I drop an image into here, or I drop it in through here, it'll refresh into here straight away. So if I can find a map somewhere, here we go. We might just grab an image of something. Doesn't really matter what. Grab this image, put it into here. Straight away, that map has, what was it called? GM session. Okay. That image has appeared in there straight away. It refreshes as soon as the focus comes back onto that window. So it's not a particularly useful image for us in the game. So we'll go back to our mini map, and again, we right click on the map. This is probably the first thing you ought to do on your maps before you share them with the players, before you do anything else, is go into layers, and we're going to enable a grid. So you can see my image has got a grid on it. A lot of people don't like grids. So if you're drawing up an image and you hate having grids on it, but you need a grid in your game, try and create a square in the corner of your map, so that in the corner of your map, that can be used as a reference for creating the actual Fantasy Grounds grid. Even if you just put a little like a corner L shape here, so that you know to measure that. But basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom into the map here so I can see this grid in large size, hit layers, go to set grid. Now I'm going to go right for the middle of that intersection, Now this particular one that says it's 51 pixels, that's pretty close. It might be that it was actually only 50. You can see my grid. If you look closely, my grid's wandered a little bit off the map here. It's not quite matching my map. I might try and do it again, or I might use the map tool, the grid tool here, to shrink it one and nudge it down a little bit, and that's pretty close. Now you'll find that a lot of maps that you pull from a PDF or pull off old Wizards of the Coast adventures or whatever, their grids are just really wonky. They might look good, they might appear to be quite straight, but when you actually measure them up, the grids vary a lot over it. So you'll find that the grids on your map that are physically part of the image might not exactly match the Fantasy Grounds grid. Not much you can do about it. Don't let it bog you down. Another really important thing with these images is don't use super high-res images. Big high-res images, as you increase the resolution by small increments, the size grows quite considerably. If we go back and have a look at this mini map that I've got here, mini map, it's 240 kilobytes. It's got plenty of detail in here for the needs of the game. Yes, I could make it more detailed. I could make it more high resolution. The effect is not going to be that noticeable in the game session. The story you tell, the positions that you put with your the adventures and the battles that happen, they're going to attract their attention far more than if this map is 5% better, but twice the size and takes twice the bandwidth to load. So keep your maps small is not necessarily small in size, but low res when you save them. So for most maps, saving in JPEG format versus PNG format will make a huge difference, and you'll be surprised at how good a JPEG image at 40 or 50% quality will look. It will still look surprisingly good, and it will use a fraction of the size of the file. And that's quite important. So what happens when we set a grid size here? If I drag, that doesn't work. If I drag an orc, who's a medium-sized creature, onto the map, that's not my orc, this is my orc, you'll find that he has taken up the right size scale on here. If I grab my Etten, who's a much larger critter, and I drop him on the map, it'll automatically size him to the right number of squares. So even if my tokens are not perfectly scaled to each other, as in the file sizes in Windows or on my file system, if and this is rule set dependent, in this rule set, my Etten is defined as a large creature, and my orc is defined as a medium creature, as are my PCs. You'll see that Fantasy Grounds is capable, because the grid is enabled, because we have a grid here as a reference point, Fantasy Grounds can scale the tokens to match the grid and to scale appropriately to each other, which is a really nice feature. Some other things that are important when you use a grid is you can use pointers for measuring. So you can do an accurate scale. You want to draw a line there to see how far it is, say for firing an arrow or a spell effect. If you wanted to cast an area of effect spell, we could, and it was like a web spell. All right, it's going to be 10 foot by 10 foot. We can rotate it. We get our spell like that. Obviously, web needs to have walls and whatever to attach. GM's going to say yes, spell fails, but I can draw an accurate map. Now I can also drag this till I get it in the right spot, because my canny spellcaster has worked out that casting fireballs and catching the barbarian and the ranger in the fireball spells every time isn't good for his health. So, you might want to cast. You need to the spellcaster is going to want to try and position his area of effect spells as precise as he can to get the maximum benefit and cause the least amount of collateral damage. So draw a grid on your map. That's the key take from this, and keep your maps small. Okay, adding modules. We've got, everyone gets a library, access to library, so the GM has a library and the players have a library. What we find when we go into the library, as the GM, you get this additional option here, modules, and you can see that to activate a module, you do this. Once again, it's not super intuitive the first time you do it, but it's kind of neat and quirky. But if I wanted to enable my players to view the player's handbook, where has it gone? Here it is. I want to open the player's handbook firstly to make it open, and then I use these icons at the bottom here to prevent players from accessing this resource and only have it available for me, to allow the players to open it if they choose to, or to force load it for players. So force loading it just causes it to download when they start up. Allow load will only load it for them, only download it from my server when the players actually try and access it. Now, if I go back into my library, I've only got the player's handbook now. As the GM, I really need some monster manuals, but I'm going to leave them as player blocked because I don't want the players to have them, but good for me. All right, so I've got a bunch more monsters here. A bunch more monsters here. I need those. Now, I've also all that story entry where I've got all those towns described and the meeting with Captain Serrana and Norro Whiston. They were all in one of these modules here. So RHOD3, you can see once I open that up, again, all these story entries became available to me. And again, I want to give that information to the players. Does that make sense? I'm hoping people are hearing me okay. I'm doing a lot of talking. Fantastic, Ted. Nice to hear you too. Pins on maps. Now, this is a really funky feature. Where is a good map to use this one? We can do it on Costs map low. Where are you? Costs map low. All right, we've got a big regional map here. Now, Ted, who just piped up just then, he'll be familiar with this map. As a GM, I can organize my data in lots of different ways. So we've looked at here where I might have an index table and I've numbered all my entries numerically and descriptively. Sorry, down the bottom, I didn't talk about this. I've got lots of different tabs. If you want to name, if you want to create a new tab, so I can add new group. Again, that was a right click. Now, my new tab, it's got no name. It's a bit boring. I want to give it a name. Again, this is super unintuitive, but here it goes. GM session notes. I type it into the chat window, and instead of hitting enter, I drag it over here. Cool, really easy, but not intuitive to find in the first place. But once you know how to do it, it's really easy. Now I can change these. I can change the color to something different, and I can also change the icon on there as well if I want to keep them all separated. Now, some people love doing that. I think the images are a little bit too small to be useful, but having different colored tabs might help you keep things organized. You might have all your session 1 stuff in red, session 2 stuff blue, or you might have your your lists that involve encounters all be red, your traps might all be black, your story entries might all be green. So you can organize things based on your preference there. But a nice way, a nice visual way to organize things on a map is, I've got my map open here. It's not shared with any players. I've got a location here called Brindle. I can right click here and I can go to layers and enable shortcuts. Now, what I can do here is find Brindle, and I've dragged Brindle onto the map, and Brindle appears as a pin. Now, so for me, I can click that and open up the map. I can open that up and see the description of Brindle. I might also have an encounter that happens just outside the gates of Brindle. There's a roadblock on the road here. I drop that, and now I've got a roadblock encounter there. I've got the town of Brindle. I've also got an image here of a little church map here, image here somewhere. It doesn't matter. Here it is, the Church of Water. I can drag that onto here as well. So we can add these on as well. Now, there's a current request in here to have some different colored pins. So you could have, say, red pins for traps, black for encounters, but that's not currently available, but I think it's coming soon. But this is a really nice visual way to set up your campaign, so you don't have to keep bouncing back to all of these other sections. You can just have your master map. Now, let's see if my player session will bind to this one. I might have to restart it. Join game. Hopefully. No. The reason that happened is I had another GM session open previously, and it's snaffled that port. So it's an unusual situation. I'm just going to relaunch that for us in a sec. Great. You guys get to see my ugly mug again while that's loading. I'll reshare it. Fantasy Grounds, start screen share. All right, so here's my GM session back in again. Now I'm going to, if you want to, as a GM, see what your players are experiencing, you want to launch a second instance of the Fantasy Grounds desktop and connect it as a player. Now, to do that, Windows 7 and 8, when you double click on an application shortcut, if it's already opened, it just brings you the current instance back up. So what I might have to do here is, so what you would do is in the taskbar, in your taskbar on the bottom of your Windows screen, you right click on it and you get the pop-up that says the application name, pin this program to taskbar or close window. If you choose the first option, it looks like you can see it, you click on Fantasy Grounds again, and it'll launch a second instance. In that second instance, which I'll share, you can see it's the standard splash screen. This time we're going to run join game. And yes, it's connecting up, which is good. Third time lucky. Okay, so I've connected up as a player, so I've got a whole lot less options available to me because I'm a player. But when the GM shares this image, apologies, which page am I on? Costs map. I'm going to share that. And yeah, we had this problem before because I'm running on the same machine and I've used this cache too many times. It didn't actually share that same map. But basically what I was intending to show you unsuccessfully was the player view of that map. And really the player view of that map is the players will see this map, but they'll never see the pins. At the moment, I've got the pins just hiding when I'm not showing the pins. So I'm just pressing the control key to highlight those pins. So the players, you can share this image with the players, and they'll never see the pins. The pins are only ever for the GM use. So you can stick as much information on here as you want, and I think that this is a really nice way to organize your campaign as a GM, because it's visual. As the players move around this map, okay, this map's a couple of 100 miles across in every direction. My players are going to be here for a long time. I can drop pins on here all over the place as I need them. If my players, well, actually, my players are currently up here at the moment, so I can be dropping my pins around here. I don't have to worry about prepping the stuff down here just yet. I can just get my pin sorted up here. So they're in the middle of Lake Rest. I've got a battle map here somewhere, and it's Town Hall 2. It's right in the middle of the lake here. Oops. So I want to view that map. I want to share it to the players now. I just click on it, it's there. On this map, I can nest these pins or these links, just like you can in the story map. So I've got all these different rooms. I've got some encounters here. So encounter 24 happens up here on the roof in room number 5. This is not the roof, this is the ground floor of, actually it is the roof. So room number 5, goblins happens in room number 6, and the chimera, I'm going to just leave him off the screen over here because he's going to fly in just when my heroes have come back out of this ruined building and they're partially wounded and they've used up most of their spells. That's when my chimera is going to fly in. So whilst he's not actually going to appear on the map right here, I want to be able to access him from the map when I need to. So I can click on this and I can add my chimera to the combat tracker from one click from here. So again, everything is laid out visually for me. So I know my players are in room 5. I can view the pins on map on 5. I've got an encounter. I've also got a room description. I've also got maybe some items or a treasure parcel in here. And you can access it right here from the map. Does everybody follow how to do that? Anybody have any questions on how to do that? So if you haven't right-clicked and enabled pins, the other way you can do it is when you start dragging this over, you can hold down the control key, and that temporarily, while you've got the control key held down, enables the pin mode. I release the control key and the pins disappear, but when I need to see them, I can click on it and I can open up that map. Okay. So Fog of War. Masking in Fantasy Grounds isn't at the same level as, say, the line of sight and the dynamic lighting that we've got in Roll20, but it's still pretty effective. This is the map view the GM can see. So before I want to share this with any players, there's a cumbersome map because it's actually got multiple levels on the same map. We'll ignore that for the moment. I right-click on the map. I go to Layers, and I choose Enable Mask. Or there's now a shortcut up here in the on all images. Now, these shortcuts will vary whether you're a player or a GM. So I can click on Mask Mode, and it applies a mask to the whole image. So the whole image, if I now share this with the players, all they'll see is this nice, pretty pink color square. If I want to, if the players have explored room 4, I can draw a nice, pretty square here, and it will, as I unmask that, it will unmask for the players. As they climb up the stairs, I can draw another square there, and well, actually, I think they're climbing down the stairs there. So as they descend the stairs, they I can unmask that, and I can, on the other side of the screen where they've come down onto the other level, I can open that up. Again, we don't have dynamic light sources or line of sight. So if I unmask this, I'm unmasking it for everybody. So your players need to, if I've got characters that have stayed at the top of the stairs and I'm unmasking something for the character at the bottom of the stairs, the players at the top, they need to feign ignorance. Or if it's on a separate map, I can share that map just with the players that have gone downstairs by dragging the map image onto. Let me grab a player session. Characters. Okay, so Sempra has joined the game. You can see Sempra's portrait up here. Someone's been messing with the good dwarf. Put him in a pink cap. It's not much better than the white suit they had him in earlier. But anyway, if I wanted to share an image just with Sempra, I can drag the image onto, I don't know if that grabbed, I can drag the image onto Sempra's portrait, and this exact pop-up would appear on Sempra's screen and only on Sempra's screen. So if I wanted to give a note or an image or a view of something just to Sempra, I could do that. Same with the battle map. If Sempra was the only person that descended to the next level and I had it on a separate map, I could share it just with Sempra. I could draw the grid, I could put Sempra on there, and he could battle or whatever foes were down there, or steal the treasure before everyone else got down there. You can play him into a separate map. The other thing that sometimes happens, the GM accidentally unmasks the wrong area. So holding the control key down when you draw your square will fill that square up with masked area. And because only half the areas that we explore are actually square, if you need to draw a irregular shape, you hold down the shift key when you draw your now you can see it's not particularly neat, but I've got a bit of a, he's halfway down the stairs, so you can only see halfway in the room. You can't see that this bottom right hand corner of the screen. And you know, there might be a genie or a leash or something lurking in the corner here, but it's out of his line of sight. So I can approximate that with this unmasking. It's a little bit simple. Sorry? Yes, you did. Yeah, so masking, it's fairly simple, but it works. It takes a little bit of getting used to. If I wanted to share this, at the moment I haven't shared this map with anyone. The way I can tell that is there's no portraits down the bottom of this map. Once I share this, if I just use share sheet, it shares it for everybody. Oh, we've got Tom on board as well. So you can see Tom's portrait and Sempra's portrait in the bottom corner here of my map. I hope I'm sharing the right screen. Yes, I am. But if I had an image that I only wanted to share with Tom, I drag it up here, and Tom is going to get to see my fancy desert nomad, but Sempra won't. We can see that Tom has this image, and Sempra doesn't. Now, as a little bit of a reminder, over here in the images folder, we can see that some of these images are P shared, which means they're privately shared. Sorry, their P's are publicly shared, and the S is secretly shared. So this one has not been shared with everybody, but if I want to drag it, I could drag it into the chat window, and then it would become publicly shared. Everybody could access it from there, or I can share it by the normal method, sharing it that way, and it changes here. Sometimes you want to take an image off somebody. The map gets stolen, the map gets burnt, they pass the map on to somebody else. So I want to take this away. I can stop sharing the sheet. Again, I might privately share it with one person. Maybe Tom steals the map, and everyone else believes the map has been lost or stolen, but Tom has secreted the map. So private sharing is a nice way for sharing of clues. It's a nice way of introducing some PvP into the game if required, or some, if your rogue likes to try and approximate a little bit extra treasure, appropriate a little bit of extra treasure, you can do things like private sharing. Encounters. When prepping for a session, if you're running short on time, some GMs manage to get loads and loads and loads of prep done between sessions. Some GMs, like myself, it's very variable. Sometimes I get a goodly amount of prep done. Sometimes I get very little done. So the main thing I want to prep before a game session starts, the minimum thing that I want to prep is my NPCs and my encounters. So anytime you want to introduce an NPC to the game, I've got some NPCs here. I'm going to create a new tab. Just give us an empty one to work with. We call it GM stuff. Give it a new color. Purple's good. Okay. Now, if I want to introduce an NPC, just even it's a monster. So I've got some monsters and treasure here. Got a bugbear. Never drag, never introduce your NPCs from an external module, such as a monster manual, into the game directly. You want to introduce them into your personalities or your NPCs environment first. There's a few reasons for that, but when they're in this external module, the links, it can't create the same links to the combat tracker and to linking your tokens on the map to the combat tracker to their stats. So you introduce them into your personalities tab first. So I've got a basilisk and a bugbear, good combination. I put them into here. We can have a look at these. We've got some very basic tokens with each of these. And the basilisk as well. Now I might decide that, we can see that, oh no, they're the right size tokens. I might find that I don't want to use this particular token for my bugbear. We can see that the bugbear entry is locked. I can unlock it. I don't want to unlock and modify stuff in my source modules. I've got some tokens in here somewhere. I'm going to quickly search for bugbear. I hope I've got one. Only him. I'm going to search for maybe Noel. Here's a good looking bugbear. I'm going to drag him into this. So now I've got a bugbear with a different type of token. Here's a better looking token. Now, I might want to have some bugbears. I might want to have bugbears with a couple of different tokens. So best way to do that is just drag your bugbear entry, create a new one. Now you might want to just be sneaky and call them bugbears and note the players don't notice the typo there. And I want to use a different token. Here's an old RMC style Null, not quite as fearsome, as intimidating as the D&T style. But anyway, so we've got a bugbear and a bugbears. We put our NPCs into personalities first. I then want to create an encounter. Right click, create a new encounter. I'll call it bugbear trap. Now, I can drag each of these entries in, or none of them. I'm going to drag all of these in, but there's actually going to be 2 of these bugbears and 3 of these. You can see it increments these placement tokens. That's important in a sec. So we've got a couple of things that are happening here. On my, we'll come back to that. Where's my mini map? Images, mini map. I'm going to remove all these tokens. My bugbear trap is going to occur on this map. Now, I've already got a grid, I think. Yep, the grid's already on here. So what I'm going to do is this entry here called bugbear trap is an encounter entry. It's got a group Now, the group may only consist of a single entry, a single NPC, but an encounter is different to a monster listing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my basilisk. He's lurking off the edge of the map here. My bugbears have made camp in this ruined tower. One of them's on guard out the front. One of them's on guard out the back, hiding in the trees. And the other three are inside. Okay, so you can see that these tokens here on the map, on my encounter, has changed to a thumbs up sign. So it means they've been placed on the map. I go, the basilisk really shouldn't be there. I can just click the thumb and he comes back to me and I can put him somewhere else on the map. Okay, so I've stuck him down here for the moment. Now, I'm going to close this encounter and all my tokens disappear. When the first time you're setting up your encounter and you do that, you go, crap, I've just lost all my work. You haven't. That's how it works. What will happen next, when I find my encounters tab here, we've got bugbear trap. I can close this, get my images. We're going back to our Goths map. We've got the bugbear trap is happening here at the town of Witchcross. You can see now at the town of Witchcross, I've got a bugbear trap. So our party are coming back from Lake Rest. They're coming down the Rest Trail. They come into Witchcross, and for whatever reason, this encounter is triggered. So I'm going to have a quick peek at my, here, we'll clean this up. You may have noticed there was a shortcut there to delete all the unfriendlies or the enemies. There's no current shortcut to delete all friendly combatants. I usually do this at the start of every session just to make sure that the links between my actual characters and the combat tracker are correct. So I drag my players in here. That introduces these actors as actors into the combat tracker. So these are linked to their character sheets. It's linked into the database. Anything I change here is reflected in the character here. Wow, somebody really bumped Semper up. He's got 173 hit points. So we've got our characters. They're linked. Their character sheet, their entries are linked onto the combat tracker. When my characters encounter the bugbear trap in the town of Witchcross, I can just click on that to bring up the encounter. I check it, yeah, it's good. Maybe I needed to change something. Maybe I needed to make that 3 bugbears. I've got too many. My players are stronger than anticipated. I want this to be a real challenge for them. I've had another one. We can see he's not a thumb. But anyway, this little arrow here, add encounter to combat tracker. When I click that, some magic happens over here in the combat tracker. All of my players from here have been added to the combat tracker. And when I open my map, we will see all these players, and I hope that's visible to you remotely, but you can see they're grayed out. They're invisible. The players can't see them just yet. Now, you can see that here. This little eye icon shows that these are not visible to the players yet. Now, one of my bugbears isn't on the map just yet because I added him late. But the other 6 characters are all here. So Sempera and Tom are wandering towards this tower, and they spot bugbear. I have put my mouse over. I can see bugbears 1, and I can make him visible because they spot him perched on top of the rubble from this tower, and these guys are still hidden in the bushes. So they might roll for initiative. Okay, we get a 7 and a 3. But because they spotted him first, I might give them a surprise attack round. But they can't see anybody else for the moment, so I haven't unhidden anybody else. But instead of me having to grab monsters out of the monster manual, having to find them on the spec how many there are, adjust the hit points or whatever else, put tokens on them, position them on the map. If I've got that encounter prepped before game, it takes about 3 or 4 clicks, and the encounter's ready to run. So the characters see the ruined tower in the distance. They can smell the smoke, the campfire burning. They start creeping up on it. I've got to make 3 or 4 clicks, and my creatures are all populated in the combat tracker. They're all on the map, bar the one that I've adjusted. They're all ready for me to go. So getting your NPCs. Now, NPCs also includes, friendlies. So, the town speaker or the captain of the guard, you want to have those people created as well, just in case something runs amok. They might join you. They might engage in a combat with you. You might offend somebody and have to have a fight against a supposed friendly. So have all your NPCs created beforehand and set up your encounters. If you don't use an encounter this session, don't worry. Somewhere else you might be able to ad-lib it and introduce it in a quiet spot in the game, or if your players go off track, you can reuse this encounter later on. So set up a couple of encounters before the game. It'll take you 5 or 10 minutes to set up an encounter. Most games that have tactical types of combats, you can't really run more than 3 or 4 combat sessions or encounters in a normal playing session. Sometimes you can only play one if it's a pretty high-powered one. So you don't have to set up a lot of encounters, but get the encounter set up first. Everything else you can wing. You can wing the interactions, the stories, the descriptions. If your players walk into the ruined town hall in the Lake West, I can read it off the PDF that I've got beside me. I don't have to type it into Fantasy Grounds and share it out to them as notes. Yes, it's better if I do that, particularly if I think there's some important clue there. But if I haven't got time, I can read that. I can ad-lib that. I can make it up as I go. But the encounters will keep. If you have the encounters prepped, it'll keep your session flowing much more smoothly. If you've got to set up an encounter with 10 people on and you haven't done it, tell your players to go grab a drink. Quick refreshment break while you set it up. But for the moment, this happens. Now, my bugbears, number 1, he calls the alarm, and bugbear 6, he comes running up to help. You can see as I show an NPC, it becomes visible on the map. Now, in reality, I would have had some masking over this map and the whole internals of the tower, and probably, let's see, realistically, it would probably look more like that. The players could probably see something like that. They can't see behind the tower here. They can't see inside the tower except for this little entrance part here. I've got a bugbear hiding in the trees here. He's invisible to the players. They didn't see him as they walked past, so I can keep him invisible on the map. Once he starts throwing spears or shooting arrows or doing whatever else he is, then I want to make him visible to the players. But even then, I might make him visible to Sempra. I might deem that if Sempra turns and looks that way, that Sempra can see him, but that Tom can't. That's not something, again, that's supported by line of sight or dynamic lighting in Fantasy Grounds. You're going to have to game that with your players. You're going to have to say, Tom, you can't see that knoll to your north, to the north of you. But in terms of interactions between these guys, Sempra attacks the bugbear. I can see Sempra's weapons here. Oh, he's got no weapons loaded. Why not? Sempra with his silver mace. Oh, he rolls a 3. It's a terrible shot. Tom, being the mighty warrior he is, he attacks the bugbear here. I'm using targeting. So the player, all that player has to do is double click their attack. Now he's actually going to use magic missile, so he doesn't have to. Magic missile always hits. I don't have to roll an attack roll. I can just roll the damage. Too many things open on my screen. I've used a slightly smaller size screen so that it was more visible over the Hangout session, but the screen resolution I've got is still 1400 pixels wide, and you can see I run out of room all the time. So normally when I game, I have Fantasy Grounds on a 1900 pixel wide monitor, and I have a couple of PDFs and other resources on my laptop screen. The more screen space you've got available to you, the easier it is, but as well, close stuff down when you're not using it. Obviously, I'm opening up extra windows here because I was opening up the character sheets to do their roles for them. I don't need that anymore. I wouldn't normally have the characters open here. The characters would roll their own bits. I would have the combat tracker and the map. I can size out some of that map. I don't need that. I can shrink it down a bit so I can zoom out a bit to fit a bit more map on there. When it became the bugbear's turn to attack, bugbears 2, where is he? Bugbears 2. Okay, I haven't prepped this guy up. I'll give him a new weapon. What is that? Warhammer 1d8 plus 1 for his strength. So he's going to, I can target Tom in a number of ways. I can use the targeting, this automatic targeting, and particularly as the GM, when I'm handling multiple characters, it's great in between while the players are having their turns. I can get my next actors set up with their targeting. So I can have him set up to target Sempra, and I can have this guy set up to target Tom. I can have this guy set up to target Tom. I can have the bugbear here targeting Sempra for when he comes out. But as each of my players come up, to keep the game flowing quickly, Bugbear's 2, he rolls his attack, it's a hit, rolls his damage, I narrate it to the players. Great, it's Sempra's turn. Now the game slows down again a bit as the player details all of his actions. But as the GM, I want to keep my things moving along as quickly as possible. Sempra has his actions. It's Bugbear's number 1, whatever. He does his weapon attack. Has no damage because I haven't defined it. Bugbear 1, he's invisible at the moment. Bugbear as opposed to bugbears. I'm not sure if you got why I've got some labeled bugbear and some labeled bugbears. It's because I've got random numbering attached to them. So if I had them both called bugbear, and I had 2 groups so I could mix up the tokens just for a bit of variety. So say for orcs, I might have 3 or 4 different types of orcs, so I can have 3 or 4 different types of tokens just to spice the game up. But they need to be added in as separate monster entries or whatever in the where's my encounters? Journal, personalities, encounters, bugbear trap. So I've got bugbear and bugbear. If I had bugbear and bugbear, my random numbers, I might end up with 2 bugbear 2s on the map. And Tom keeps saying, I'm attacking bugbear 2, and he's attacking the wrong one. Like if he's attacking on the combat tracker, for example, instead of on the map. So that's why I called the second group bugbears, just in case there was some duplicate. There was just something that I do. I don't know if it's the best way or not. That's just something I do. So, but this bugbear here, he's still out of action for the moment, as in the players can't see him. Bugbear 1, he's heard the action going on. He's sneaking out the back way. So the players still can't see him. He's snuck out here. I've used his movement up. Still, he's got no line of sight to the player. So I don't introduce him to the game. Tom has his go. Meanwhile, I'm working on what the basilisk is going to do. I'm working out what the bugbear is going to do so that I can keep those actions moving as they go on. So at some point, bugbear here bursts out of the trees and pisses my players off because, whoops, because suddenly they think they've the battle's sort of swung in their favor, and suddenly a new combatant appears on the map. So I can show him, hide him. Somebody casts an invisibility spell on him, he's hidden again, he attacks, the invisibility spell wears off. You can hide your attackers. You can even, if he's in the bushes and you don't trust your players not to metagame it, you can just hide him as he's in the bushes. So he's got a big grey square around him at the moment because he's the active character and the targeting is ready. Now I've moved off him. Somebody else has got the active session. The other thing I really wanted to show you guys quickly was another tip for campaign management. Sometimes you might be running a game that goes for months or years or even longer. So you might have a campaign that you build up and you might want to run 2 different groups through it. It gets really messy trying to run them through the same environment and trying to keep track of what they have and haven't done. It doesn't work. So what you want to do is, I'm going to quit out of here. I'm going to go back to the launcher. Nice. I'll reshare that again for you. Which one are we after? Start screen share. All right. So we have got one on here called Red Hand of Doom. So anyone that didn't recognize that or thought they might have recognized that some of those sound places, it's from a Red Hand of Doom module. So this is a campaign I've started, but there's no players have ever played inside this campaign. This campaign I use just for prep. So what happens is inside here, you can see all those familiar story entries. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. There's a bunch of images. There's a bunch of personalities, maybe even some encounters. Now, I haven't kept up to date on this, but basically I do all my prep in here and I export it as a module. So we're going to do that quickly. You can type in here export, brings up a dialog. I'm pretty sure you can also do it from a right hand one in here somewhere. Can't see it. Can't remember where it is, so we're just going to use the chat command here. It's /export. So there's some important things here. You need a file name, GM session. You need a you don't need a thumbnail. You need a name, GM session. You don't need anything else here. Merge ID is very useful to use if I am adding stuff to something I did last week. All right, so the merge ID, you basically use the same merge ID to add content to a previous module. And now I can choose what stuff I'm going to export. I'm going to export the story, the images and maps, personalities, encounters. That's all I need. Okay, the rest of this stuff I don't need to export for the moment. You can choose all. I've got a couple of custom tokens that I've used in this. For example, perhaps I've used some of these. I didn't quite drag him. Now these tokens will also export with it. So I hit export now. Now also, if you wanted to add a thumbnail, we could do that. I don't know. We've added a thumbnail there, hopefully. So I'm going to export this module. It's called GM session. Export it. And over in the chat window, module exported successfully. So what happens now, all these story entries, all these images, personalities, encounters are now in a module, kind of a read-only module. Now I can create a new campaign and open this module and use all the content. I can create a third campaign with a different group of players and import this module, access this module, and use it. And that's how you reuse content between different groups or between different sessions. The other thing it helps you do is stop your campaign bloating. So I try and keep my images really small. I know plenty of GMs that like to have 2 and 3 megapixel images, and they've got stacks of them. It takes longer for the players to download all the content when they start. It takes longer for that stuff to load up, and you're more likely to hit memory limits with older computers with lots of higher res images. Some people like to have every token that they've got. They've got thousands of that, and they like to have every one of them available to them. Don't. Just grab the stuff you need, put it in a module, open that module in your campaign. When the players have finished the Red Hand of Doom, you close that module, and all of that content, all of that stuff is removed from that campaign cache. The players don't need to go back there. They've moved on to a different part of the world. There's nothing in there for them. But it means that my core campaign size stays much more manageable. It means that when a new player joins in and he's got to download all that history, he only downloads the current stuff, the stuff that he needs. It means that as with a lot of databases and file systems, as they get bigger, as they get fuller, the chance of corruption increases. So avoid all of that by sticking. If you've got time to prep all this stuff up, prep it up in a module, export it, and then import it into your new session. When we load our other game back up again, I'm going to go to modules, and I'm hoping I'll get to see the GM session, and I can open that up. Yeah, I'm going to get a lot of dupe data because it's already in another module I've got loaded, but we'll see it anyway. We've got a library, we've got a modules. Now we can see this module I created earlier called GM session. Stuck a nice portrait in there instead of a thumbnail. When I open that up, we'll close it first, sorry. We'll open my story entries up. We've got a bunch of story tabs here. If I add that, I get a bunch more. Now I can create a brand new campaign with a brand new group of players and do zero prep work, because I can just grab this GM session and stick it in there. Now I can't give it to another GM because it contains copyright information, but I can reuse it for myself in a new campaign next year or with a new group or whatever else. But then some publishers like Paizo with their Pathfinder Society modules, they will allow Fantasy Grounds GMs to share their Pathfinder Society prepped modules with another GM who can prove that he already owns the PDF. So as long as he shares his receipt of that same module, the GM can share that module. So if you've got a half a dozen GMs and they all each create one Pathfinder, if they convert one Pathfinder Society scenario, they can share it. Suddenly you've got 6 scenarios and you only have to do the prep work for one. Now, that's the exception to the rule. Most publishers, we don't have an agreement like that with them. So all the prep work that I've done for Red Hand of Doom is only for my use. But if I do a good job of it, whatever, I can reuse it at a later time, at a later campaign. Does that make sense? Okay. As you can hear, my voice is getting a bit croaky. I'm not used to talking this much. It's exactly 12:30 at my time, or 1.5 hours since the session was supposed to start. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone confused by something I told them? Anyone have something I haven't covered that they really want to know about? I can think of one. Modifiers. Okay, modifiers are one-time effects. So if a player wants to, if a player is in a flanking position, the player can click on and agree with the GM. The GM says, yes, you're flanking +1 or flanking +3. The player can click this, and that flanking modifier will apply just to their very next roll. It's gone. If I do another roll straight after that, there's no modifier. Okay, it's a one-time use. But these are descriptive, but they just modify the die. So I've got one here. The characters have been affected by despair. Roll the dice. Rolls a 6 - 3. They're in deep trouble. All right. So it's a one-time effect. They stack. I might have berserker and flanking, and I roll this. If I miss this, it's terrible. 15 + 6. So I've got +3 +3 for flanking. Now, if I was doing an attack roll, it would be more descriptive. We would actually see Kurg's the Barbarian with his two-handed maul, and then berserk and flanking, and plus any of his other modifiers that Kurg the Barbarian has. A effect is something that has a duration. So your character finds gauntlets of ogre strength, and instead of changing his strength on his character sheet from 16 to 18, and then run the risk later on of forgetting why it's 18 or whether it really was 18 or 16, you can apply an effect with an unlimited duration onto a character. So I stick this on Sempra, and his strength won't actually become 18, but any calculations that use his strength will use 18 instead of 16. Anything that uses his strength bonuses will get +3 instead of +2. Any of his siege checks, when he has to roll a save versus strength, they will save versus, they will get a +3 modifier instead of a +2 modifier. So all those things are automatic, and because it's got a 0 duration here, it'll never expire. So as long as he's wearing those ogre strength gauntlets, he'll have that. Whereas the Barbarian's Rage, say it's going to last for 3 rounds, and Tom, the Barbarian now, I do that, it's got a duration of 3. As the rounds come to Tom, as we go past Tom, the duration, or actually it's going to go from when the initiative it applied shortly. Where was it? There it is. So when I applied the effect to Tom, it was Bugbear's 1's turn. So it's decrementing the duration by 1 when it gets to the Bugbear's turn again. Does that make sense? So if I go all the way around again, so the reason that happens is you can either set it to happen on the initiative turn that it occurred at, or which is 6, or you can have it happen at the start of the turn. Now, if you have it happen if the duration increments or decrements at the start of the turn, and your actor is the last person in the combat tracker, he might not really get the effect, the full effect of, say he casts a bless spell and it lasts for 4 rounds. Now really, if it decrements at the start of the turn, the first turn was a waste for him because nobody got to attack him while it was in effect when he cast it. So having it go on the initiative of the person, of the initiative order when it was applied, means he gets a full turn with that. Now, as we go around one more time, we will see that the Barbarian's Rage, which is still D1, when we get to Bugbear's 1 again, it will disappear. So the Barbarian's Rage is worn off. Now, the Barbarian's Rage added 4 to his strength, 4 to his constitution, 2 to all saves, saves on will and morale, and it reduced his armor class by 2. And it did all that automatically. Now, effects are absolutely rule set specific. So if your rule set hasn't had effects programmed into it, you know, the descriptions like to know that STR will apply to strength and what to do with it and what will and morale mean and things like that. So the big rule sets like Pathfinder, D&D 3, 4, and 5 have stacks of effects. Castles and Crusades is another commercial rule set. It's got a few effects, but not nearly as many. So the other way you use effects is just as a descriptor. So a stinking cloud is cast, and my character is going to be nauseated for 5 turns, or actually the bugbear is, and Tom. And it's just a descriptor. Does it do anything at the time? No. But at me as the GM, when it comes to that character's turn, I go, he's nauseated, he's incapacitated, he's doubled over, throwing his guts up. Next actor, Tom. Tom is also nauseated, he's collapsed to the ground, he's struggling to breathe. Next actor. And when it goes around again, we'll find that that should decrement to 4 and 4. So the spell is, the stinking cloud has started to dissipate, the effects are starting to wear off. So it's just a prompt and a reminder for me and for the player, but even that degree of automation where it tells me that the player is affected or assisted or whatever it is, still helps. The syntax is super important. So for a descriptive one, it's nice and easy. You just give it a name and a duration. For these other ones, you've got to have the syntax correct. And it's quite fiddly. If you don't have it exactly right, it'll tell you. So if I've got one here that's incorrect, it'll tell me. Effect, no, that one was okay. I don't know if I mess one up. Do something like that. It should, it obviously read enough out of that to start with. But anyway, if it doesn't know what your codes are, it can't apply the modifiers. So if you stick something in there that it doesn't have code at the back end to read, well, it won't do anything. This I as well, if I can make these effects available just to me or to the player as well. So that can be useful as well. Okay. Anyone got any questions? It's like an auction, all silent, going once, going twice. All good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And I know half of you were from the session previous, and I can see a couple of you have got running sessions this weekend. And for the rest of you, I hope you're getting a game over the weekend. All right. Thank you very much, guys.